Chapter 7. Later that night, around midnight, Charlie opened his eyes and heard Lulu screaming, "The cloud monster! The cloud monster!" He looked out the window, and a hideous green cloud was swirling in the sky. All of a sudden, it twisted into a giant's face, a giant, sneering face. A face Charlie recognized. "Ah!" Charlie screamed, and then everything went dark. Charlie's heart pounded. Where was Lulu? Why was it suddenly so quiet? And wait, where was he? In bed, he realized he had a nightmare. Charlie put his hand on his chest and took a deep breath. "This is bad," he thought. Gordon had tormented him at school, at the beach, and now in his dreams. Charlie got out of bed and took deep breaths. He glanced in the mirror above his dresser. Even in the dim light of the moon, Charlie could see his swollen lip in the reflection. He didn't look like Charles the Great. He looked like Charles the Ugly, Charles the Scared, Charlie's the Weak. A few tears slipped out. He wiped them away. "Enough," he told himself. He sat down on his bed, switched on his lantern, and reached for Murakami's book. Reading about Murakaki's life always made him feel better. He'd had a rough time too, and look at him, the most famous magician in the world. One of the best chapters was near the end, when Murakami was kidnapped by two men. Charlie settled back on his pillow and started to read. "I was walking home from a show, enjoying the night, and two men stopped me. They both had guns. They ordered me to walk with them to a filthy building. I figured out very quickly that they did not want my money. They had been sent by my enemy. He's a magician named Theodore the Powerful. For years he'd been trying to steal the secret of my most popular trick, the floating woman. It had taken me years to create that trick. It was my treasure. Theodore had sent spies to my shows in the past. They'd broken into my hotel rooms looking for the sketches of how the trick was done. And now he sent these brutes. The men took me to a small room, sat me down at a table, and shoved a notebook in front of me. "Write it down," the taller of the men demanded. "A magician never reveals his secrets," I replied. "Tell us or we'll shoot you," the other man said. I almost gave up. I picked up the pencil and began to draw the trick. But then a voice whispered through my mind. My own voice. "You have power." But what power could that be? I wondered. These men were very strong. They both had guns. And then it came to me. My magic skills. I could use magic to trick them, to scare them into letting me go. I thought hard and somehow came up with a plan. Luckily, I always carried a few small props with me. Cards, some coins, and a small vial of red liquid called magic blood. The vial was made of the thinnest glass. It was meant to be easily broken during the trick, and then shards would disappear into dust. I stood up. I was raised by a family of snake charmers, I said to the man. This was not true, of course, but the man didn't know that. I was bitten by cobras many times, I continued. In fact, I have been bitten only once by a cobra while I visited a village in India. The venom gave me powers, I told the man. Quite the opposite. That cobra bite had nearly killed me. And now, if you do not let me go, I will use my cobra powers to take all of the blood from your bodies, every drop. I use a low, rasping voice. I flicked my tongue several times, like in a snake-like way. I swayed my body slightly as a cobra does when it rises from a snake's charmer's basket. I rolled my eyes up into my head so that only the white showed. The men looked at each other in confusion, and here was my chance. I stuck my hand into my pocket and grabbed the fake blood. Keeping it hidden in my hand, I reached up to the taller man's head, right next to you. I squeezed the wire so it cracked. The magic blood sprayed onto the man's face, the wall, and the ceiling. It was a gruesome show. The men ran screaming from the room. I rushed to the police. Theodore never bothered me again. My floating woman trick was safe. Charlie slowly closed the book. His whole body tingled. You have power. It was like Macaulay's voice was whispering inside his head, and that's when it came to Charlie. He could trick Gordon like Macaulay had tricked his kidnappers. Charlie lay there for hours thinking, turning ideas over and over in his mind. By morning, he had his plan. He needed a few days to prepare. But soon, everything was gonna change. Chapter 8. 4 days later, Saturday, September 8th, 1900, around 9:30 a.m., Charlie's house. Doing anything so exciting today? Papa asked. Charlie peering up over the newspaper. Lulu was stuffing a pancake into her mouth, and Mama was sipping her coffee. They all looked at Charlie. I'm going to the Pengoda, Charlie said, which wasn't a lie. That's where he'd find Gordon on a Saturday morning for sure. Of course, Mama and Papa. Of course, Mama and Papa had no idea what Charlie actually planned to do today. Neither did Sarah. She definitely wouldn't approve of his plan. Luckily, she and her family had gone to Houston for the weekend. Sarah was now 15 miles away. Thank goodness it's cooler today, Mama said, sliding another pancake onto Lulu's plate. Yesterday had been brutal, one of the hottest days of the summer. Papa nodded. Seems like the temperature dropped 10 degrees before the sun came up. Speaking of sunrise, Mama said, eyeing Charlie, what you what got you out of bed so early? Charlie gulped. He had been up early, but he hadn't thought Mama or Papa had heard him. I think fast. I just needed a drink of water. Then I went back to sleep. He couldn't tell them the real reason. He crept into the kitchen to get some cockroaches. Dead dead ones. He needed them for the trick that was going to terrify Gordon Potts into leaving him alone. Finding cockroaches in Galveston was never a problem. They were everywhere, even in Mama's spotless kitchen. Charlie quickly found 3 dead ones under the stove. He had them in his pocket now, tucked inside a box. Papa put his newspaper down on the table. Well, it's a good thing we're not in Florida, says here in the weather report there's a very bad storm there. A storm? Lulu said, her eyes suddenly wide. No, darling, Mama said, shooting Papa her. Don't scare Lulu, look. Not anywhere near here, Papa said, giving Lulu's cheek a gentle pat. We might just get a little rain. Charlie leaned over and read the weather report for Galveston. Rain Saturday and Sunday, some winds from the north. Papa was telling Lulu the truth. No storms today, which was a relief because a storm would keep going away from the Pendona and ruin Charlie's plan. An hour later, Charlie was on his way to the beach, eyeing the cloudy sky. Charlie decided it definitely looked like rain, but anything was better than yesterday's sticky heat. As usual, the street was packed, but Charlie barely noticed. In his mind, he was going through his trick. He spent hours working it out, practicing over and over in the mirror. He felt like Milwaukee, rehearsing for a big show. He stopped Gordon, stride up to him, and stared right into his eyes. Gordon Potts, he said in a low, steady voice. Did you know it's possible to put a cockroach into a person's skull? It's an ancient trick I've mastered. Then he would pull the cockroach from his pocket, wave in front of Gordon's eyes, and whip it right up next to Gordon's ear. He'd make sure Gordon felt the creature's spindly legs and antennae on his ear. But then, but then Charlie would secretly let the cockroach slip back into his palm. The French drop. Gordon would think the cockroach has venom into his skull. Gordon would be good and spooked, and Charlie would finish off the trick. I will remove the cockles from your brain, he said, if you vow never to bother me again. I'll give you 5 seconds before the cockroach can lay its eggs. That egg-laying part, Charlie was especially proud of that touch. When Gordon swore to leave Charlie alone, Charlie would reach up to Gordon's ear and pretend to pluck something out. Finally, he would reveal the cockroach that had supposedly been inside Gordon's skull. Charlie smiled to himself as he made his way along the crowded sidewalk. He wasn't even that scared. Still, his heart was really thumping. His whole body seemed to be vibrating. His ears echoed with a low, pounding boom. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. But it wasn't his heart. Charlie realized this as soon as the beach came into view. He stared ahead, his eyes wide. That sound, it was coming from the Gulf of Mexico. Even from 10 blocks away, he could see them. Waves, giant waves, bigger than in the picture of Hawaii. He blinked hard, wondering if his eyes were playing tricks. Was this some kind of mirage? But no, there were waves, towering up, foaming, crashing down. Ba-room, 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 ba-room. He stared in amazement, almost hypnotized. He'd been born in Galveston. He spent half his life on this beach. He's been through dozens of storms, but he'd never seen anything like this. Chapter 9. Around 10:15 a.m., the beach in front of the Pagdonda bathhouse. There was a big overflow, even bigger than the one that he and Sarah had played in a few days ago. People were lined up on the sidewalk on the edge of the water. Excited voices rose up over the thundering roar of the waves. Look at those huge rollers, a man shouted, pointing at the waves. Incredible, cried the woman. Mama! A little boy squealed. Take me closer. Each wave towered up as tall as Charlie's house, and then crashed down. Wow-boo, wow-boo, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Kids weren't splashing and flowing in the street like last time. Today's big game was to stand on top of the flooded beach, wait for the waves to rise up, and sprint away before a wave could crash down over you. Lots of kids were doing this, shrieking and laughing as they ran back and forth. A few bigger kids were at least halfway down the beach. It looked fun, but Charlie had to admit that the waves scared him a little. The entire Gulf looked different. Children, foaming, furious. He thought of Lulu's cloud monster and what Sarah had said about how people once blamed storms on angry gods and goddesses. Watching the crescent sea, it was easy for Charlie to imagine Poseidon standing above on a cloud, with his beard whipping in the wind, raising his arms to create each wave. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Charlie's stomach did a flip. Poseidon seemed very angry, but no one else seemed worried. The whoops and claps of the excited crowd got louder with each enormous wave. Charlie felt almost hypnotized by the waves, until he spotted a tall, beefy kid in the middle of the beach, one of the risk takers closer to the gulf. Even from the back, Charlie could tell his chest was puffed out. Gordon. Before he could lose his nerve, Charlie reached into his pocket. He plucked a cartridge from the box. He tucked inside. He tucked it inside into his palm, locking it into place like he practiced. His hand was shaking bad. He waited for a low lull between the waves. The big ones came every 2 minutes or so. Then he took his chance. His knees wobbled as he waded onto the beach, where the water came up to his thighs. The wind pushed against his back like an invisible hand. Go, go, go. Before he knew it, he was standing behind Gordon Potts. He took a breath and tapped Gordon on the shoulder. Gordon looked at Charlie with surprise and then his usual sneer. What do you want, twerp? He practically spat the question. Charlie opened his mouth, but the words he'd practiced were all gummed up on his tongue. Did you know? His voice was high and squeaky, an ancient trick. Cockroaches. Charlie's hands were suddenly slick and with sweat. The cockroach slipped out of and plopped onto the water. He looked up at Gordon, who seemed ready to pounce. What had Charlie been thinking? He needed to get out of there. Out of here. Now. Some kids around them had the same idea. Most were laughing, but a few were shouting, "Look out! It's a big one!" And then the sky seemed to disappear above Charlie as a giant wave towered up, bigger than any that had come before. It rose higher, higher, higher. Charlie and Gordon turned to run, but wave was too fast and too big. Charlie barely had enough time to take a breath before the wall of water curled over and swallowed him